more love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. You're listening to News Talk 1590 KVTA, and we're here every Sunday. If you miss anything, you can go to our website, livingyourinspiredlife.org, and tune in and tune up. And you can also like us on Facebook, the Living Your Inspired Life Facebook, and share that with friends. So with that said, we've got a couple of interviews happening today that are all about consciousness and prayer work. And so my first guest is someone who has established what is called the Prayer Project. And I want to welcome Paramahansa Jagadish. Jagadish, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much.
So if you wouldn't mind just telling briefly the listeners about your background and then why you were called to begin this prayer project, and then we'll dig more into what the project actually is. I would appreciate that.
Okay. Well, I started my spiritual path when I was 4 years old. I had an entrance into the liberated state that people loosely call enlightenment at 4 years old, and so that brought me back up to like past life attainments. And then I just dived into spirituality by the time I was 10 years old. That's all I was interested in, is study and meditation and the other types of practices that we do on the spiritual path. And that led me to living in India for about 12 years, doing intensive retreat practice with great saints and perfected saints. And so it was a very wonderful time. That was in the 70s and 80s that I was able to do that. And I go back to India when I can to, again, engage in this deep kind of retreat practice.
So then the prayer project came out of your spiritual practice, right?
Yeah, it came out of being in the Western world and seeing how much suffering was going on in the world itself, because I was able to watch TV, news programs, and all of that stuff. And the book was written about 9 or 10 years ago, but I never felt it was ready, and I still do not feel it's quite ready to publish, but you have to publish it someday, right?
Right.
And get it out there. So that's what I've done.
Okay, so the book is called The Prayer Project, and it's downloadable for free on the prayerproject.com website, yes?
Yeah, it's prayer-project.com.
Okay. Now, the thing that you're now focusing on, which I guess is why the book is available on the site, is to develop this committed 3 times a day prayer practice that we can do, anybody can do. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a atheist, right? Anybody can do this, praying 3 times a day for peace on the planet.
Yeah, peace and goodwill, exactly.
Okay, so again, since you were exposed anew to the Western culture of news and the whole suffering from that POV, what is it that you see praying for peace and goodwill on the planet? What is that going to do, really? Because really, I mean...
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, there have been a lot of studies written by credible people, studies on the efficacy of prayer. So we know that it works for healing, for bringing people out of depression, different things like that. We know that it works, but what we're looking for is numbers. I'm personally looking for a few 100,000 people, if not a few million people, on the planet Earth engaged in commitment to doing prayer 3 minutes a day, well, like 3 times a day, 3 minutes each time. So that's 9 minutes out of our lives. Or even if you just do 1 minute 3 times a day, that's 3 minutes out of your life to do a committed prayer asking God or the divine to intercede and cleanse the minds and hearts of all living beings, especially those people in power. And if we do that, I am positive that things will shift.
You know what? I really personally agree with you, which is why you're on Living Your Inspired Life. I've seen it. I've seen it happen in individuals' lives where that transition happens almost seemingly immediately. So
yeah, exactly.
So is this like the Buddhist prayer of kindness?
Oh no, it's everything. The prayer, the second half of the book is prayers and sayings from different religious and spiritual traditions and famous people of the world. So those are the adjunct prayers that you can use, or your own prayers. But I actually do have a few prayers I want people to start with, ones that I've created, a 3-part prayer.
Well, would you share one of those with us right now?
Yeah, well, it's one prayer, but it has 3 parts to it.
So I could do one part in the morning, one part in the afternoon, and one part in the evening?
No, you do all 3 parts together. It's one prayer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one prayer, and so you do all 3 parts together. Shall I do it?
Yes, if you would. I'm excited to hear what it is.
Yeah, very, very good. It's on page 20 and 21. And like I said, you can download a free digital copy at prayer-project.com, and you can get the physical book at online at Barnes & Noble, etc. So a 3-part prayer means the first part is for our own cleansing, the second part is for the cleansing of others, and the third part is a let it be, amen, let it be, let it manifest. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
And when I say God, you can translate that into the divine or the greater power or the ground of all being, etc.
The universe, that kind of thing.
Well, something beyond the universe, maybe.
Okay.
But
I know there's lots of people that like to use the universe as their idea of God, or what I like to say, the G word.
Exactly.
So,
actually, what I have in here is the universe and beyond. So you were very intuitive on that one.
I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and when we begin prayer, we want to be in a settled mood, grounded to the earth and centered in the heart center, and take a few deep breaths. And so we're in a deeper mood for this kind of prayer. God, I humbly ask for your blessings to purify my body, mind, and soul, and restore me to my natural condition of love, peace, joy, and wisdom. Most loving and compassionate God, the divine power and energy of the universe and beyond, I humbly ask for your blessings to purify and illuminate with your light, love, peace, and wisdom all beings of the universe, all beings of the earth, all beings who are in power and affect the lives of others, especially our government leaders, business and financial leaders, and our spiritual leaders from the entire globe, that they may all be cleansed and purified of negative motivations and actions, and filled with your light, love, peace, joy, and wisdom. Amen. Let this happen now within me and spread around the world, transforming and bequeathing all noble qualities and actions expressed and enacted everywhere upon everyone and everything.
Amen. And so it is, man. Jagadish, I got to say, the second part of that, I think, is the most vital part for what's occurring right now all over the planet with everything we've been seeing, especially in the current news system. I'm deeply grateful that you wrote a prayer like that.
Yeah, and as you know, this is just one way to participate. It's just joining the many other hundreds and thousands of people who are galvanizing groups of people to do this kind of work.
Well, one of the things, I just want to read a quote from the Prayer Project that I read, where you said, through the Prayer Project, I want to create a connection between all philosophies and faiths in one single unified voice. Prayer is truly universal. It is a singular bond that binds us to so many things: our ancestors, our cultures, individuals, nations, religions, spiritual communities. And so part of what you want, it's part of what you're encouraging people to do is to then make a pledge to pray 3 times a day, yeah?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so explain to people why you want them to pledge, because, you know...
3 times a day. Yeah. Hello?
I want you to explain to everyone why you want them to pledge.
Yeah. Make a commitment. That's a very great question. Thank you. When we make a commitment, it intensifies the effectiveness of what we're doing. It intensifies our own spiritual evolution and growth, and it intensifies the work that's going to be expressed out into the world. It's through commitment that the work just becomes tenfold, if you will.
Okay, I agree with that. And how do you make a pledge to the Prayer Project? Do you just tell yourself, all right, I pledge that I'm going to do this, I commit myself to doing that? Or is there...
Yes. That's right.
Well, is there an interactive way to do that with what you've got going on?
Yes, there is an interactive way. Pledge as you wish, but if you also pledge on the website at prayer-project.com will lead you to the website stewardshipofthesoul.com, and there's a place for you to pledge. When people pledge online, they see that there's a lot of people getting involved in this, and it helps encourage each other and inspire each other to continue.
Now, you also said that we don't, if I choose to pledge and pray 3 times a day, how long is that commitment for? For like a month or a year or what?
That's a good question, and I would ask, what do you think we need?
Well, I think, forever, but I also know myself. I'll say, yeah, that sounds good, and then, 6 weeks will go by and I've completely forgotten that I said yes to that.
Yeah.
I think that
You're
happens to lots of people,
Right. We need to do this for a few years. And what we'll find, though, is prayer is one of the deepest spiritual paths that we could take. And what we find is if we go through the resistance each day of doing it.
Well, one of the things that we talk about on Living Your Inspired Life is that any form of change, any kind of change, begins with the individual, and it starts within yourself. And so to make this kind of a pledge to just, and you've made it so simple for people, Jagadish, it's to just do 3 minutes 3 times a day, 9 minutes out of your life. That's like nothing,
right,
compared to the power that prayer will evoke and create on the planet.
Exactly. It's already proven. But what we need to do is get the masses. We need a few 100,000 people to step up to the plate and do it now. The only time is now, and the only place is here, exactly where you are.
Yes, I totally agree. And for people out there that, are like, yeah, I don't know, I think that every individual, and we talk about this often on Living Your Inspired Life again, but each one of us has a place in this energy system, in this God source field, if you will, that can activate change. Each one of us. So for many people, they go, oh, but I'm just one person. How is that going to make a difference? But one person makes a huge difference. And like you said, then if people make the pledge on prayerproject.com, then they can also get to see that there's hundreds and hopefully thousands of other people doing the same thing.
Oh, exactly. And don't depend on thousands of others. Do it yourself anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah. But we want a few 100,000, and it's prayer-project.com where you can get the book and also pledge or not pledge. Don't let that be a hindrance to you doing the work itself.
Right. I often encourage people just to put your toe in the water, Stick your toe in and see what happens. And then if you want to wade in knee deep or waist deep, go for it. But to sit on the edge and say, oh, well, I can't, is kind of silly, because we're all in this together. You've said on the site, you've said that this is, like you said, now is the time. There are so many different things happening globally, and we can work together individually and collectively to make a difference.
Yeah, and now is the time, because if we don't know how much of the negative impact that's going on with climate change and corporate takeover and governments who don't care about the people that they govern, this can snowball and just keep growing. We don't know that. We're not guaranteed a heaven on earth, individually maybe, but not collectively. So we want to take action right now and reverse these things through, of course, the very powerful modality of prayer.
Right. So this isn't just about, quote unquote, peace on earth between religions. This is like creating the peace that has that vibrancy and resonancy of love, right? That heals everything. It would heal, in my mind at least, environmental conditions. It would heal human heart conditions. It could even heal physical human condition. Yeah.
Yes, all of those things, because it's about peace and goodwill, about everyone feeling so much peace and love, like you were saying, love, that we have automatic, spontaneous goodwill to others.
Okay, wait. Say that again, Jagadish. Love, say it again. Automatic, spontaneous?
Goodwill towards others. When we have peace, a deep peace, and we cultivate loving kindness and compassion through the prayer practice and whatever other practices the audience, everyone is doing, it will relate to the experience of unconditional love, and the expression of that is goodwill and good actions towards others.
So just share briefly for everybody, one of the foundations that you stand on, if you will, or that the vibration you resonate from all of your spiritual practice your entire life, is that quality of love that's of the divine, not love of the humanity kind, but love of the divine.
Oh boy, you're one of the first people to point out that difference. Yes. The highest human love is unconditional love, and it's fantastic and it's wonderful. But I also want to lead others, because I'm a lineage holder, to the attainment of divine love of God, and divine real-life interaction with God herself. So that's eventually where I'm going with all the projects that I'm doing.
Okay, so, and what does that mean, interaction with? Just briefly, because we're almost out of time.
Oh, well, this could go into another
I know.
show.
Maybe you have to come back again, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. This means that in India, the great meditators, God appears to them and interacts. And it also happens in other traditions, like Christianity. There was a great Saint Seraphim, where the baby Jesus appeared to him and would play with him every day.
So we have that capability to interact with the divine that is beyond our knowing in this moment.
Yeah, directly.
Okay. So we are out of time. The idea is the Prayer Project, and you can go to prayer-project.com and download the book and find out more about it. And Jagadish, if you would indulge me and read the second part of the prayer you read, if you would read it one more time for us.
Oh, yes, of course.
And we'll be complete.
Also, I'm doing a prayer intensive, a 2-hour intensive this Saturday in the West Los Angeles area.
Oh, awesome. And so how can they find out about that?
Go to the same
website, Prayer
scroll
Project.
down and click where you need to go to find all that.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for putting that in there.
Exactly. This Saturday at 10 a.m. in West Los Angeles.
Thank
It's
you.
also live streamed, so people can experience it in their own home.
Cool.
Okay, so I will go into this.
Thank you.
Most loving and compassionate God, the divine power and energy of the universe and beyond, I humbly ask for your blessing to purify and illuminate with your light, love, peace, and wisdom all beings of the universe, all beings of the earth, all beings who are in power and affect the lives of others, especially our government leaders, business and financial leaders, and our spiritual leaders from the entire globe, that they may all be cleansed and purified of negative motivations and actions, and be filled with your divine light, love, peace, joy, and wisdom. Amen.
Thank you, Jagadish. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Susan Burrell from Living Your Inspired Life. I always find it easier and more fun to expand my life by being connected to open-hearted, like-minded people committed to being on the same path I am. If you feel the same way, I suggest you visit a Center for Spiritual Living. There are wonderful communities in Ventura, Ojai, Santa Barbara, Oxnard, Pleasant Valley, Camarillo, and Westlake Village. You'll find terrific people, great information, and more tools to help you live the life you were born to live. So go to csl.org to find a center near you. That's csl.org for a center near you. And welcome back to Living Your Inspired Life. We're having a 2-segment day today, and the first half we were talking about the prayer project with Jagadish, and the second half I am going to be speaking with the director of Association for Global New Thought. So I want to welcome on the show Barbara Fields. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. Now, I want you to share with everybody what the Association for Global New Thought, I always want to say AGNT, but the Association for Global New Thought does. One of them is the Season for Nonviolence that I love. Can you share with people about that as well?
Sure. I think that it's important to start out by saying that one of the reasons that Association for Global New Thought came into being was not because we needed another New Thought organization. The Unity Churches and the Centers for Spiritual Living already have so many wonderful organizations that are leading in training ministers and developing churches and doing wonderful work in that realm. But what didn't exist in the New Thought field when we came on the scene in 1997 was a programming branch for social action projects that could feed into all of the churches, regardless of whether they were Unity Religious Science or what have you. And so our charter project was the one you just referred to, the Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence, because it was the first time that we had gotten the churches to engage in their communities, creating programs and projects in nonviolence education and other forms of nonviolence training and study, so that they were really expanding their agenda a little bit, and through that process managed to attract a lot of people from the community who were spiritually oriented but not necessarily religious toward one tradition or another. And so our mandate over the years has been to engage in interfaith dialogue. We've worked with His Holiness the Dalai Lama several times. Our programs include environmental work and humanitarian work and interfaith, intercultural work, that sort of thing.
So the thing that I am hearing you say, as you just described all that, is the environmental and social justice component of Association for Global New Thought. So it's a place where people that don't necessarily consider themselves religious can go and find ways to be active in the global community and make a change for the better.
Yeah, that's precisely right. You know, what we really find these days within religious communities of all types is that people are considering themselves, as I said, spiritual but not religious. And even the word spiritual can trip people up sometimes, because what we're really talking about is a common base of values and ethics and morals that almost all people share across the board, in terms of compassion and caring about justice and wanting a more peaceful society. You know, the values that we share in common may be said to come from a spiritual place in us, and rather than a political, secular place in us. And therefore, AGNT tries to offer an avenue to action in the community and in the world that is more deeply rooted in people's value systems and isn't just a reflection of their political orientation at any given time.
Or their religious orientation.
Exactly. It gets more to the human factor of what do we all value and what kind of society do we want to create. And in fact, does that come from a sacred place within us, even though we may not want to name it something?
Yes, I know that has been my personal experience of feeling that place of compassion, and it really doesn't have anything to do with anything except that I'm a human being. And this idea of also that Agent is doing is talking about collaboration, working with other groups and communities to really begin that connection in the global manner. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about the work that the Association for Global New Thought does.
Yeah, thanks. You know, in fact, one of the projects that we're very proud of, it was initiated some years ago with William Ury and the Project on Negotiation at Harvard University. It's called the Abraham Path Initiative, and as an example, they've actually built now a path for pilgrims among the Abrahamic faiths, Jewish, Christian, Muslim people, who in the region, in the Middle East, people can go and walk a path and receive hospitality along the way. And what AGNT came on board to do was follow the Season for Nonviolence model, in which we train groups to learn about the three religions that shared the common patriarch, Abraham, and establish local Abraham Path walks within their communities, including those three religious traditions, so that there would be more of a basis in your own backyard for dialogue among the religions and education, especially for the young people, about what we more shared in common than the differences that kept us apart. And that was a very successful initiative and really opened a lot of doors for people.
So, and it's still active, yes?
Yes, it's still active, and there's websites. You can go to our website or to the Abraham Path Initiative website and find out a lot more about that.
Okay, and this is a path that the first one was actually physically built, or so that people could walk a pilgrimage of sorts?
Absolutely. It was modeled after the Camino Santiago, I believe,
yes,
in Spain, a place where people could go in the Middle East where the path originally that Abraham walked is, in a sense, is being resurrected, so that there's stops in communities along the way where you can receive hospitality and meet people from the town and walk with other pilgrims. So, yeah, it's definitely a going initiative. It was named the #1 new walking path for pilgrims of that sort by National Geographic magazine this year.
Oh my gosh, that's fabulous. I love it. Now, AGNT has another newish thing that you're going to be doing this fall, right?
Yeah, we're so excited about this. We've done a lot of conference-type events, but it was suggested this year that as we got ready to do our Awakened World Conference, that we consider looking at some of the new films out there that deal with spirituality, society, and the inner self, and see if we can find these films that aren't too visible in the mainstream media that people have, in fact, made their life work in some cases. Really thoughtful, not just documentary films, but narrative films and short films, based on these principles that we all hold dear. And we decided to create a film festival retreat in Santa Barbara, California, the last week in October, so that people can see these films, meet with the filmmakers, and then actually have a fully fledged workshop about the topic of the film and how these ideas can be practiced when you go home. You literally bring change home with you from the film festival.
Oh, wow. And the festival is called Awakened World?
The Awakened World International Film Festival Retreat. I know that's long, but people can find out more about it just by going to awakenedworldfilmfestival.com.
Okay. Now, are there going to be any environmental Save the Planet films there as well?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're looking at new economics. You know, what does money mean these days, and what are some of the alternative economies that are springing up? And we found that as soon as we begin talking about some of these new topics, that work on the environment and sustainability comes up in almost every different kind of context. So we do deal with spirituality and intercultural issues. We deal with economics and the environment and education. And we also deal with issues like death and dying, you know, things that affect the inner self in a different way, healthy lifestyles, relationships, that sort of thing.
Let's talk a little bit more about what you were saying about the new economic, because it sounds like this film festival, and it's the first time you're doing this conference as a film festival, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It sounds like it is a place for people to begin to tune into other modalities, and you don't have to attend it so that you can do your spiritual work. You can go and be exposed to new ideas of how to, like you're saying, new economics or new sustainability or old sustainability, because really, you know, the ancient people already knew about sustainability. It's just it's just since the Industrial Revolution we forgot about it.
Right. We have a wonderful film called Bridgewalkers that is all about indigenous cultures, and I like that you point out that it's not a festival where you'll quote unquote go and do your spiritual work or only have films that deal with these, you know, more or less esoteric topics. It's a place where you find out about, as we talked about earlier in this interview, people who are coming from a place of deep compassion. They have a longing for justice. They want more peace on earth and in the community. This is just kind of a way of looking at all the ways in which, when you unpack those ideals, what do they look like in action, and how can you participate in them? So it's really bringing all these ideas down to earth. It doesn't avoid the fact that these are spiritual subjects for some people, but it doesn't feel like it's something that's getting, you know, thrown in your face every time you turn around.
Right. So, Barbara, just for our listeners, what I'm sorry, I got attached to this whole idea of social justice, and so what are some things I kind of want people to hear? What are some tools or skill sets that that Association for Global New Thought has uncovered that people could use when they're done listening to the show?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, going back to our charter project, which is the Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence, we're actually going to be entering our 18th year in 2015.
Yahoo!
Yeah, no kidding. Talk about a sustainable program. It caught fire and just grew from the first year. And one thing we're proud of, because we offer it completely free to anybody who wants to go to our website, AGNT.org, and look at, we have a menu that lists all of our current projects. And the very first one on the menu are the Seasons for Peace and Nonviolence, because as it turns out, when we celebrated our 10th anniversary, we did so with an event called the Gandhi King Peace Train. This was actually an event where we rented these private train cars and attached them to the back of Amtrak, and we had a conference on a train all the way up the California coast, and then we stopped a couple of days and had another conference and came back down the coast. And people who had been working on the project for 10 years but had never met each other got to have a chance to really talk about what it meant to them and where it was going from here. And so the consensus that the group reached in meeting like that was that this wasn't something that we only wanted to confine to, one season of the year. So we expanded the program, and on the website you'll find a whole bunch of tools. Number one, for Season for Nonviolence, programs and resources and contact information, how to find a task force in your area, how to begin a task force in your area, all kinds of things related to the teaching and principles of nonviolence. But the next quarter, when we go into the spring, we added the Season for the Earth. And so when you go to that portion of the website, which is really very clear and easy to find, you'll find all kinds of things about how to lead a more green and sustainable life, how to present environmental education to kids, personal practices, community practices, how to actually work with your city government for policy changes, tons of things for Season for the Earth. And following Season for the Earth, when we move into the summer season, we run a season called Season for Humane Service. And that has programs about poverty in your community, hunger in your community, how to help at the local and global level when it comes to, developing people or underserved people. And then the final season of the year is coming up just now. We're just about to enter our season for interfaith and intercultural celebration. And on that part of the website, you can find study courses and services and meeting agendas and everything that you might want. What we try to do for people is say, we know this is really heavy lifting, and if you as an individual or a small group of friends would need to start from the beginning, you don't have artwork, you don't have descriptive information, you don't have contact information, you have no programs. We put this all on our website. It's all for free, and all you have to do is download it, and pretty much you're up and running within a couple of weeks in a community. And this teaches people how they can be leaders for the first time, even if they've never done something like this before.
I had no idea that you had expanded the season into that many seasons. I've participated in the Season for Nonviolence a few times, and in fact, I know that particular season has daily practices or affirmations, if you will, that help you stay focused, and it always starts with the inner to the what I'm going to do for others and what I'm going to do globally. And when my son was young, we would, or I would, read those out loud to him, and then pick a word or something to focus on during that day or that week that was about nonviolence and community cooperation and all of that. And the Season for Nonviolence for me, I think, is just an awesome experience. And if you haven't had an opportunity to experience it, for anybody out there, to go to the Association for Global New Thought website and check out the various seasons. I think it's very important because, like you just said, Barbara, anybody can start in their community. You can even just start within your own home and say, here's what we're going to practice for the next couple of months.
Well, that's one thing I love about the program you just mentioned. We call it the 64 Ways in 64 Days program.
Yes.
On the website, for that program alone, we probably have about a dozen iterations for teens, daily practices for children, short practices, group activities, public service announcements, daily words and quotes. All of these things are iterations of 64 Ways and Days that people did in their communities, came up with a new evolved idea of the one that we presented them with in the first place, gave it back to us, and they were also magnificent. We didn't want to lose anything, so we formatted them into a variety of programs because we find that communities are unique, and what program works for a certain individual or a certain community doesn't work for everyone, because we're talking about 900 cities around the world that are participating now.
Oh, wow, that's fabulous. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's very broad, and the programs include, book study clubs. We have last year we of course instituted a new program honoring Nelson Mandela. He was deceased last year, and
Yes.
we wanted to be sure that his understanding of the program of Ubuntu
Yes.
was shared widely. We have the Ethics for a New Millennium study course based on a book written by the Dalai Lama. We have a way of teaching you how to have a compassion dinner in your community so you can raise funds for hunger or for other kinds of work. 7 practices for peacemaker programs for schools, communities, churches, any kind of church. It doesn't, you don't have to be you don't have to be a New Thought church. It completely crosses the boundaries.
Yes, and when I first heard about the Season for Nonviolence, when you were saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be church-oriented, one of the things that I wanted to do was to take it into the local elementary school system.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had presented it, this was just interesting, when I had presented it to one of the principals and a couple of the PTA moms, they loved it. They loved the idea. But then when one woman of a particular denomination did some research, she decided that it was that it was involved in some sort of spiritual aspect, right? And took it off the table. And I was so disappointed because really the truth about everything that Gandhi practiced, that Martin Luther King practiced, that Nelson Mandela practiced, that the Dalai Lama practices are just what you said earlier, Barbara. They're human qualities, they're human values that we all have, and it's not about a spiritual modality, a religious modality of any kind. These are all human qualities that each and every individual has when they put their attention on those qualities and grow them from within themselves.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it can be brought down by a single individual. But I'm happy to say that the program has now been instituted in public school systems in many cities throughout the United States. It actually means that there are people sitting on those boards evaluating programs from a positive point of view, an optimistic point of view. They're not focusing on finding a word or two that can divide us. They're actually looking for tools that can up-level the whole system. And so in many, many cases, we have been very successful. I thought it was interesting. I saw something years ago in the Chicago Sun-Times. Chicago's my hometown, even though I now live in California. And it was a column by a wonderful African-American writer who was asking the question, why was the civil rights movement in the 60s so much more robust and passionate than some of the more secular programs that are being unrolled now in our universities and so on? And the answer she came up with was, in the case of Martin Luther King, as in the case of Gandhi, as in the case of Cesar Chavez, as in the case of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, their efforts toward peacemaking and nonviolence weren't based on cosmetic social changes. They were based on a deep-seated spiritual conviction that human beings on the planet needed to have a greater reverence for life for everyone. And so if this is what spirituality looks like, and someone objects to that, then it just means that we have to renew our commitment to the work. It's not that the work is flawed. It's that people's consciousness needs more training, more education, and maybe we're in some way involved in that process.
And I would add more awakening, yeah?
Yeah, man, you got to you wake up to these ideas, and then you're never the same anymore. You want to be part of the solution, not just more, somebody, Don Beck, who's a friend of mine from another group, he has this wonderful phrase that says, we're not giving out credit anymore for running around and yelling that the Titanic is sinking. We really don't want it. We know what the problems are. We know that there are huge challenges in front of us. So we need to get on board with what could actually be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And there are still some people out in the mainstream media that are running around, like you said, like what I say is running around like Chicken Little. The sky is falling. Instead
Well,
of going,
that's
wow.
what sells.
Yeah, instead of going, wow, what's mine to do about it? What is ours to do about it?
Right.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me, Barbara, that people, when we are able to be awake, aware, the connection that we have heart to heart with others is more profound and powerful than when we're running around in our individual lives saying the sky's falling. You become more empowered by your connection to others through your heart and your awareness than just putting on those glasses that keep you kind of blind.
I think that might be the single one factor that is responsible for the success of the seasons. Because, in 1997, 1998, there were initiatives available on the Internet, which was also very different at that time, that looked toward these kinds of issues. But today there are millions because this model is popping up everywhere. And one of the things we heard a lot was, I'm just one person. What could I possibly do that would make a difference? And so we listened to that, and we started instituting at the ground level. Before people reached out and did any outreach in the community, we had people sitting in circles just sharing what were their real truths and concerns about how they felt about being alone and what it meant to have a support system or a circle of friends that shared these interests and not just the sort of mundane cookie-cutter activities of everyday life. People were amazed to find people in the community that actually cared about the things that they cared about. They didn't even know that.
Yeah, I used to be one of those people, I got to say. I mean, years and years and years ago, it was like, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? So why should I even make an effort,
And look at you now.
I know. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? But I do notice, I have a 20-year-old son, and that generation is going through a similar thing still, of, okay, I'm just one person. What can I do? And I'm like, you can go vote. You can, educate yourself and become aware. You can do volunteer work and connect with other people that you will never meet in your life that have similar concerns about the planet. It's just interesting to notice that generationally, it seems like people almost, well, not almost, but have to start with the I'm just one person. What can I do? And then as you continue to contemplate that, you begin to see that there's ways that we're connected that you haven't seen before. I think maybe that's part of the waking up too, is I'm one person and now I can connect and be more people.
Yeah, exactly. That's very empowering. And there's a side effect of that I find interesting, which is when you start moving into that level of awareness, you find that in many ways your own personal life gets better. That the problems and anxieties and concerns that you hold on to as an individual, you notice that there's a lot of healing. It isn't what you set out to do. When you started to look outward, you weren't setting out to be helping yourself per se. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of self-helping that comes out of it, because when you look outward, your horizons expand, and you network, you meet contacts, you find solutions for your own life, and you find by looking outward at the bigger picture that some of the things that were concerning in your life before tend to be a little less bothersome at this point because you've expanded your vision. And that's happened personally for me, and I just can't tell you that there's no amount of psychological work or counseling or anything that I could have done that would have sort of gotten me out of my own story to the extent that this larger work has done.
And you have done a tremendous amount of work, Barbara. I'm just in awe, I have to say, because of your commitment. You've been committed to this process or these projects, this whole idea for a couple of decades, right?
Yeah, I have to say that I'm old enough to be able to talk in terms of, 2.5 decades of this actually having been my career. So But I don't even think of it as a career in a sense, because at a certain point your life and work become very integrated, and I consider myself just privileged to be in a position where I can say that that's true, that the things that I'm quote unquote working on every day are the things that I would care about and give my time and energy to regardless. So to me, that's a marker of a successful life, and I feel that it's a privilege. It's not an entitlement. It's a real privilege that that more and more people that I know are waking up to in their lives too. There's a whole community of us out here.
Yeah, globally, there's a whole community.
Exactly.
Which is really kind of cool. So, Barbara, if you don't mind, for sharing with our listeners, perhaps one thing in your past that caused you to turn your attention into this work, so that an individual listening might go, okay, because when we talk about it from what has been accomplished with Global Association for New Thought, I'm just wondering, for the individual that's out there that's maybe feeling alone and lost, what would be a beginning point or a wake-up call from, if you don't mind, something from your personal experience?
Well, I think that when I began this career, over 2 decades ago, that I had undergone for a year of treatment for a life-threatening disease. I'm not recommending that people go out and get life-threatening diseases in order to, start on their passion. But things lined up after that time that I couldn't really have anticipated. The first thing I did was I got involved with the Council for a Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago. It should have been a time when I was resting and avoiding stress and trying to heal and recover, but instead I got kind of thrown into this huge project that brought about 8,000 religious people from all traditions to Chicago for the centennial anniversary of the Parliament of the World's Religions. And what I found during that process was I became program director for that event.
Oh my gosh.
From my perspective, I didn't know what to do or how to do it, but the board that I was working for basically said, well, nobody knows how to do this because it hasn't been done for 100 years, and we're just making it up as we go, more or less. It turned into a very successful event, and what I found was I started realizing, and I hope this doesn't sound kind of woo-woo to anybody because I'm anything but that kind of a person. I started finding that every time there was something that I thought I didn't know how to do, or I didn't know who to ask, or I didn't know what was coming, that there seemed to be a solution that popped up somewhere in my vicinity without me asking for it. In other words, the process was leading me in a training exercise. And I realized to a certain extent, I wasn't really the one who was doing it. I felt like I was really being guided, and it's a wonderful way to lead one's life or to do one's work.
Oh my gosh, and you've been doing it that way ever since, it sounds like.
Yeah, because there's nothing that I've done ever since that I actually know how to do. I mean, I'm disciplined and I'm diligent and I do my research and my homework, but I also trust in the process, and whatever help is available beyond my own ego self that can come in and assist me, I'm totally open to it.
Oh my gosh, Barbara, I want to come and study with you. I want to learn how to do that. I
think you're already doing it, Susan.
It is. It's a challenge when you begin to allow yourself to listen to your heart instead of your head, because the outer world will tell you, oh, no, that's not logical. And like, where's your business plan, or what are you doing? But when you're listening to your heart and, like you said, being guided by that, then it is true that then those opportunities and doors open that there's no way in the world we could have made those opportunities or doors even show up.
It's true. We are creative beings. That's simply the nature of us. We are born to be creative. And that doesn't mean following the outline that everyone handed you before. It means being informed and assisted and educated by everything that came before, but also to be discerning, and then to be in the moment and be present with the furthering or the creativity of the process. So, that process can lead you into creating, a heck of a great business plan too, if that's what is being asked of you in order to get where you need to go to achieve your vision.
Yeah.
Then it's your responsibility to have the discipline to come up with the business plan for the people who need the business plan.
Right.
But it's part of a greater whole, and it isn't quite so categorized as I was led to believe when I thought I was trying to learn how to do all this stuff. It's much more part of an integrated whole process, and when I allow that creativity to have expression in me, as long as I've got the discipline to know that it's not magical, which, it isn't magical. This stuff is really heavy lifting. It's hard work. It's not necessarily glamorous. And the people who are out there making a difference know that. But you just love it so much, you can't help but be part of it.
Barbara Fields, I'm so grateful for the work you've done, the work you continue to do, and I'm grateful for Association for Global New Thought. So if you want to find out more about it, go to AGNT.com, yes?
AGNT.org.
Barbara, I look forward to having you back on the show in the very near future, and I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.